This is Paul Schneiderman on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. This is the 11th edition of Sports and Stuff. And today, as my special guest, we have former University of Washington Husky basketball legend and NBA player Eldridge Recasner. Eldridge, hang tight. I'm going to give you a little background view to the listeners. Then I will fire off some questions, and I think we'll have a good conversation. We're going to hit on a range of subjects, some serious and some more light. Eldridge Recasner is a father and husband, Louisiana native, University of Washington basketball star, three-time All-Pac-10 conference guard. Eldridge played in the Continental Basketball Association. Eldridge played basketball abroad. Eldridge Recasner played in the NBA for about 8 seasons. Eldridge had to work very hard. He was an undrafted player, and he played abroad and played in the minor league basketball system to get the NBA, and he had a career for about 8 years, way more than the average player. Eldridge played for several postseason teams. In the playoffs, Eldridge has worked as a broadcaster. He's currently a basketball announcer on the Pac-12 network. Eldridge has been a coach, and we'll learn more about you today, Eldridge. But first of all, Eldridge, thank you for coming on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Paul, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. It's great to have you, Eldridge. I've been following you for years, and it's great to do a one-on-one with you. And by the way, Eldridge, I'm going to have to mention this to listeners. Happy late birthday.
Yes, sir. I finally dropped 50. How you like that?
Congratulations. You've earned it. Eldridge, here's my first question for you. Basketball's obviously been a big part of your life. Why don't you share with us how you got the basketball bug as a youngster growing up in Louisiana?
How I got the basketball bug? I think I got it from my uncles. My mother's brothers all played. They weren't very big. They were 5'6", 5'7", but I used to hang out with those guys. They used to take me to the playground, and I used to watch them play. And one of my uncles in particular was a huge basketball fan, and he was a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers. So when I started watching Dr. J, Julius Erving, that's when I fell in love with the game. But to be honest with you, Paul, football was my first love. You know, I thought I was going to be the next Lynn Swann. And when I got to high school, I wasn't very big and strong, so I realized
you're 6'3", Eldridge.
I was about 5'9", 140 then, going into the 9th grade. And I said football is just not going to work, so I started playing basketball. I actually chipped my tooth playing football in the street, and that kind of ended my football career there in my 9th grade year. So that's when I picked up basketball, and I fell in love with the game.
What was it like growing up, Eldridge, in Louisiana in the 1970s, 1980s?
It was awesome. You know, it was warm all the time. You know, every day after school, I just went to the playground and played basketball with my friends and grown men. You know, back then it was different. There wasn't much of an AAU circuit in those days. You just kind of played with the people in the neighborhood. And as I got older, I was playing with, 14, 15-year-old, playing with grown men, 30, 40 years old, and kind of developed into one of the better players in the neighborhood. Yep.
Great background. Eldridge, you went through the recruiting process many years ago, and you ended up at the University of Washington. Can you share with us a little bit about that recruiting process? And give us a little take right now on some of the recruiting scandals going on right now, including the Rick Pitino scandal.
Yeah, so I was recruited out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Ended up coming up here to the University of Washington, but that definitely wasn't my plan because I didn't know anything about UW in those days. I was recruited by a guy named Andy Russo at Louisiana Tech, who had Karl Malone. And my next biggest offer was Creighton, where Willis Reed had a guy named Benoit Benjamin, who Seattle area fans probably remember from the Sonics. And so when I went on my recruiting trip to Creighton, it's funny, Willis Reed and Creighton told me, well, you want to come here because Karl Malone's going to go pro and they're not going to be very good next year. Then when I went to Louisiana Tech, they said the same thing. You want to come here because Benoit Benjamin's going to go pro and Creighton won't be very good. But in the meantime, Louisiana Tech with Karl Malone made a deep run. I think they either made it to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8 with Karl Malone, and Andy Russo was a hot young coach in college basketball. Marv Harshman retired. Andy Russo took the job up here and asked me if I wanted to come to UW, and I told him, I said, well, no, I don't know anything about it. But my dad said, hey, that's a great school, that's a great conference, the Pac-10, you're going. So I pretty much didn't have a say in the decision.
You've been here a long, long time. Eldridge, when you were recruited to the University of Washington, was the Andy Russo connection to Louisiana and your connection to Louisiana, was that part of the whole time?
That was the whole deal. I didn't know anything about the University of Washington. I had saw one special on Deadlift Shrimp and Chris Velp, something about the German connection. Obviously, I knew UCLA and USC for football, but when you talking about Oregon, Arizona, Oregon State, Washington State, I had never even heard of those schools, didn't know anything about them.
Different part of the country for Louisiana kid, huh?
Yes, sir.
This is Paul Schneiderman of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Eldridge Recasner. Eldridge, I want to get your take on this, and you're obviously very familiar with the University of Washington program. Do you have any thoughts on the UW's decision to let Coach Romar go and to hire Mike Hopkins?
Do I have any thoughts on it? I thought it was a tough move at the time when you consider, Michael Porter Jr. and his younger brother Jonte coming here. So if I was the AD, I probably wouldn't have been able to pull the trigger knowing those guys were coming. But, you never know all the ins and outs of the story and what took place. And
Sure.
For some reason, they found it was best to part ways with Lorenzo at that time. Mike Hopkins is a new coach, and I think for, all former players, they just want to see the university do well. So, I wish Mike Hopkins all the luck in the world. And, Lorenzo seemed to have landed on his feet. He's down there at Arizona, which is going to be really awkward when they come to town. But it looks like Lowe is doing well himself. So I think it worked out for all the parties involved.
Lorenzo's such an honorable guy. It was a tough decision, wasn't it?
Oh, without a doubt, I'm pretty sure it was. Lorenzo was liked by everybody, including Jennifer Cohen, so I'm pretty sure it was a tough decision for her.
Eldridge, I want to ask you a question here about youth sports and Little League sports. There was a recent Seattle Times story about how coaches are addressing parents these days at the high school and Little League sports level. I know you've coached Eldridge, and you obviously know the basketball and sports scene real well. One coach, for example, in the Seattle Times story, has a policy that he always wants to have the child present when talking to a parent about playing time and other issues. Another female coach interviewed has some very specific criteria about how to have a conference with a parent. Eldridge, what are your thoughts on how coaches should address parents about kids' playing time issues at the Little League and high school sports levels?
The Little League is gotten ridiculous. I was just having a conversation with two of my friends last night. One of them is on the Positive Coaching Alliance board. And, and having a son, I have a 7th grade son that plays basketball. It's tough, but we're so involved now, and I think so many people are putting their eggs in the basket where they want their kids to get scholarships. They're putting pressure on these coaches to play their kids, and, it's about competition, and you got to look at whatever level it is that you're talking about. If you're talking about a league at the rec center, then it's equal playing time for everybody. But if you go all the way up to the AAU level where it's pretty advanced, then there's no guarantee for playing time for a kid. And I think that's sometimes where parents get frustrated. They say, hey, my son's on the team. But, AAU teams, they're trying to win games, so they're going to play the kids that they think can help them win. Feedback is something that I think you should give the parents so they can understand the situation with their kids. But it's a tough thing to deal with because sometimes parents can be really, really demanding, and sometimes their outlook on their kid isn't realistic.
And right now, college, as we know, is so expensive. A lot of parents are obviously looking for scholarships for their kids at the college level.
Well, a lot of parents are damn near paying for a college education with all this travel AAU teams do. You just can't put, when I played, I can't recall my parents coming to a game until I made the high school team. When I was playing rec ball and youth ball, they never came out to any games. I didn't have any pressure. All they wanted to know was, am I on the playground? Am I staying out of trouble? Well, you say now, youth sports, the sad part of it is youth sports has become a business just like everything else, and that's the most disappointing part of it for me.
No question. Different era, Eldridge. Eldridge, you played in Germany, the Philippines, and Turkey before you started your prominent NBA career. Give me a little take on playing those countries. Which of those 3 countries did you like playing in the most?
I would say I like playing in Germany the most. I played in a little town called Bamberg. It was a great area. It was like a mini Vienna. Just a really cute little town. But I also enjoyed my time in Istanbul and Turkey. The Philippines was probably the worst poverty I've ever seen in my life, I'd say with the exception of Haiti. I mean, it just was poor. You couldn't even imagine how poor folks was. If you had a piece of property and you had a front yard, folks were setting up tents in your front yard. That's how bad it was. But the basketball was really great. They used to get 12 to 16,000 fans per game in the Philippines, and as soon as I stepped off the plane, man, it was amazing. All the people knew who I was, so they really love basketball down in the Philippines. If you ask me what country is basketball the most popular, there's no doubt the Philippines.
I've been to the Philippines, and your observations about the country are really on target. They love basketball. It's a very poor country.
It is extremely poor. I was in Manila, and it was hotter than hell, but they really love basketball.
Great background, Eldridge. So, Eldridge, you played in the Continental Basketball Association for a couple years before you made it to the NBA. Give us some thoughts on what the CBA life was like back then.
The CBA life was the life wasn't great, but the league was great. You know, I played in Yakima for the Yakima Sun Kings in the CBA, and I didn't do it my first year out of college, and I regret that. I wish I would have. But Yakima gave me a chance to pursue my dream. We won a championship my last year, which was 1995. I was named MVP of the league, and I made some great friendships over there. A lot of my friends, Chucky Brown made the NBA, Anthony Goldwire made the NBA. A guy named Reggie Jordan made the NBA, but I still keep in contact with those guys. Our athletic trainer, Jeff Clark, is now the trainer for the Portland Trail Blazers. You know, so he got a call up to the NBA. But it just was a really, really fun experience, man. And it gave me an opportunity, like I said, to pursue my dream of the NBA. And I tell if there's any kids listening to your show, you know, you just got to follow your dream. You never know what can happen. I went from playing from the Yakima Sun Kings to starting for the Houston Rockets. And I tell you what, it doesn't get more of a fairy tale story than that.
Well, it has a little Disney there, doesn't it?
It's got a little everything in that one.
Eldridge, this is Paul Schneiderman on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Eldridge Recasner. Eldridge, the NBA has a rule right now where a player needs to wait 1 year after graduating from high school to play in the NBA. Do you agree with that rule?
No, I don't like it. You know, I think if you're 18 years old, you can go to the military to go to the war, you should be able to go to the NBA. I'm not saying it's good for everybody, but if LeBron James is going to go to college, for what? It's a waste, I mean, for a guy like that. So I think the rule is in place to try to help some of the guys that maybe be on the borderline, but there's some guys that just have God-given talent, and going to school isn't doing anything for them. So I wish they would just let the guys go, and I think that the problem would solve itself. Those that are good enough will get drafted. Those that aren't, they would have to go to college.
Little survival of the fittest there, huh?
Yep.
Spencer Haywood years ago played a big role in his famous U.S. Supreme Court case where the NBA had a rule where a player had to wait at least 4 years from his high school graduating class to play. Spencer Haywood sure played a big role in changing that, didn't he?
Oh, Spencer Haywood played the biggest role. I mean, there wouldn't be a LeBron James or Darryl Dawkins or Moses Malone without Spencer Haywood. And I don't think a lot of the young folks today realize that. You know, he had a special that came out called Full Court. I went to the premiere here in Seattle. Spencer's a really good friend of mine, but he paid a hell of a price. You know, he paid a hell of a price for suing the NBA, trying to get eligible to play. You know, member of the Olympic team in 1968, one of the greatest players of all time. But I'd really like to see Spencer get more credit for what he did. He sacrificed a lot of his career. He was pretty much blackballed for a long time. He's in the Hall of Fame now, but it should have taken place a long time ago.
Eldridge, you and I are both the Generation X era. Did the Generation X era players, did they recognize what Spencer Haywood did? A lot of guys that played in your era?
Man, you know, I don't know. I hear all this millennial, Generation X, baby boomer. I don't know the difference with all that stuff, Paul, to be honest with you, man. What I'll tell you is no. I don't think they do understand. You know, we did a premiere for the NBA Players Association in New York City, and, you know, just tried to bring awareness because it's weird, Paul. You know, the Michael Jordans, the Julius Ervings, the Magic Johnson, everybody remember those guys. But it's a lot of great players like Spencer Haywoods, Bernard Kings, you know, guys like that when you mention their name, the younger kids just don't know who they are, but they were some of the greatest players of all time. And Spencer Haywood, you know, when you talk about 29 points and 14 rebounds a game he averaged over 4 years here with Seattle, man, people think of the best power forward in Sonics history, they think Sean Kemp, but Spencer Haywood might have something to say about that.
He was a terrific player, like you said. He had a lot of courage in what he did as well.
Yep.
Eldridge, you had played in the NBA for what was it, about 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
Okay. Was Jordan the best player you played against?
Is that a joke?
Of
course he was. Ain't nobody better than Michael, in my opinion. He's the greatest player that I've ever seen.
This is Paul Schneiderman of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Eldridge Recasner. Do you think Jordan's better than LeBron?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, there's no comparison to me. You know, and the best example I can give, I love LeBron, don't get me wrong. I think he's great. He's the most scrutinized athlete of all time. But at the area I give Michael the edge is at the end of games. When Michael had the ball at the end of the game, if you wasn't a fan of the Chicago Bulls, you were scared to death that he was going to make it, and you prayed he missed. When LeBron has the ball at the end of the game, to me, you're praying that he makes it, and that's pretty much the difference to me. Michael could have went 0 for 20, but when the game was on the line, you always felt he was going to hit that shot. And like I said, I just have a lot of respect for him. You know, the first time I played against him, he was on me like white on rice, man. And I asked him, I said, well, golly, you know, what's wrong? Did I do something? Did somebody tell you I said something about you? And he just told me no. He looked me in the eye and he said, I just want you to know why I'm considered the best. And ever since that day, I've always had a lot of respect for Michael. You
know him personally pretty well?
Know him from playing against him. You know, I don't know him personally off the court. You know, when I was with the Atlanta Hawks, we played the Bulls every year during the regular season and in the playoffs, and we matched up with them pretty good. And a few of those games, I had to guard Michael for the majority of the game. So he was just the most fierce competitor that I've ever seen on a basketball court. He was the most skilled. He was the most athletic. The most driven. So when you put all that together, man, he was the best. And the way I try to break it down to people is he was the best offensive player and the best defensive player in the league. And when you think about that, it's usually one or the other. You see a guy that's really good offensively, let's like say Kevin Durant, then you see a guy that's really good defensively, like say a Gary Payton. But when you talk about a guy is the best at both of those, I would, if you can find somebody that's better than Michael Jordan, I haven't seen him yet.
Well, you give him very strong accolades for sure. Eldridge, as I mentioned in the introduction, you're currently a broadcaster on the Pac-12 network for basketball games. You've also been a basketball analyst on radio stations. Do you prefer the play-by-play or the more the commentary side of being an analyst?
I like the commentary side, because the play-by-play guys they do more research and they give more background and stuff. I just like to describe the action as I see it, and having an opportunity to work with the Pac-12, a conference that I played in, is great. I've been out here in Seattle now for 32 years, so I've been a member of the Pac-12 family for 32 years. So it's an honor and a pleasure for me to go out there and call games. I'm off to Washington State tomorrow to call a game for them. I'm back here on Sunday to call a game for UW. So it's been a pleasure to work in the conference.
Well, we enjoy listening to Eldridge. You're very folksy. You have some great observations on basketball. Okay, I got a real basketball junkie question for Eldridge, and this is a question I asked. This is a real inside basketball hoops kind of question. Robert Horry has 7 rings.
Yep.
He was known as Mr. June for his playoff performances. Should Robert Horry be in the Hall of Fame?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because Robert was a teammate of mine.
Best supporting actor, right, Eldridge?
He definitely wasn't the leading man. That's what you mean. But I tell you what, when it came to hitting the big shots, man, he knocked him down. They call it Big Shot Bob. I don't really consider Robert to be a great player though. So when you talk about the Hall of Fame, I think you really have to be a great player. So I would say no on that one, unless you're going to put him in there for just hitting timely big shots. And if that's the case, then I would have to say yeah. But when you talk about the Hall of Fame, you look at a guy's overall body of work. Robert Horry was never an NBA All-Star to my knowledge, and if you're going to get in the Hall of Fame, you're not an NBA All-Star, then I don't think that qualifies you.
But you don't think it's a frivolous argument, though, that there's a case for Horry to be in the Hall of Fame?
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's frivolous.
Oh, you do?
Because
okay.
Like I said, I played with him. But for people on the outside that see him hitting the big shots, they look at it a little differently. So what are we going to do next? We're going to put Steve Kerr in the Hall of Fame?
That's a great rebuttal to my question. I just like to. I just asked that question to people that are really into basketball. I get all sorts of different answers to that.
When I think of a guy in the Hall of Fame, or I think of a guy that's got his number retired in the rafters, when you see the name, you should go, "Wow, that dude was a bad dude." And I don't know if everybody's going to say that about Robert Horry across the board. Great clutch shooter, there's no doubt in my mind. So if there's a category for great clutch shooters, then yes. But when you talk about a body of work as a player, I would say no.
Appreciate your response. Just want to get your take.
Yep.
Eldridge, you played for Donald Sterling, the now dethroned former owner of the LA Clippers. As you know, a couple years ago, Commissioner Silver played a role in basically kicking Sterling out of the NBA. Did you agree with that decision by Commissioner Silver?
Oh, of course. I thought the comments that Donald Sterling made were inappropriate. But I gotta say, when I played for the Clippers, I didn't see any of that. He was just kind of known as a cheap guy, as an owner that didn't want to pay the players. But when you start bringing in the racial dynamic, I never saw any of that. But I have a meeting with Adam Silver every year. I think he's a great guy, and there's no way he's going to let a guy like that come in and tarnish the brand. That's the NBA. I mean, I think the NBA welcomes everybody. They don't care, what background, black, white, red, green, foreign, domestic, Catholic. It doesn't matter. If you can play, you can play, and the NBA welcomes you with open arms.
Well, Silver may be a good guy, but you would agree, Eldridge, he needs to do a lot more to get an NBA team back to Seattle, right?
I think he's trying. We lost the team wasn't on his watch. That was more Donald Sterling. So I think Adam Silver's a great guy. I think he wants another franchise in Seattle. And to be honest with you, I think we're going to get one. But we need an arena first, whether it's Soto or somewhere else. We need to get an arena first before we're even going to be considered.
Paul Schneiderman on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Eldridge Recasner. Eldridge, a lot has been going on right now with some of the protests involving Kaepernick and the NFL national anthem issue. I hear Eldridge sometimes, tell me if you agree with this, that comparatively speaking, the NBA owners are a bit more progressive than generally the NFL, MLB, NHL owners. Do you agree with that? In other words, is it a little easier for NBA players to protest than some athletes in the other leagues?
I'm not sure it's easier. I just think the NBA is more visible. When you look at football, your favorite player, you might not even know what the hell he looks like because they've got a helmet and a uniform all the time. Whereas the NBA, even if it's not your favorite player, you know the guys once they step on the court because they're so visible. And I just think it's less guys in the NBA. For some reason, the NBA has embraced players protesting, and the NFL has been just the opposite.
I appreciate your perspectives, and because you actually played, and I think you have some insights on, for sure, on the business side of the league as well. Mm-hmm. Eldridge, I asked your friend Greg Lewis this question. Greg is, playing in the NFL. He's one of your UW friends and colleagues. Yep. I also asked a similar question of Bill North, former Major League Baseball player. Can you share with us a little bit about the NBA labor situation when you played? Billy Hunter, I believe, was the players' union chief when you played. Yep. Tell me a little bit about Billy Hunter, and what do you feel about the new players' union chief, Michelle Roberts?
Well, Billy, we had a lockout. And you're bringing back some bad memories because I think I lost $400,000 that year during the lockout. We had a lockout in 1999.
That's no joke.
No, it's no joke at all. And we had I think we didn't start playing till late December or maybe early January. I can't really recall, but I know I missed 40% of my pay that year. And they flew all the players into New York. We were supposed to vote on a deal. And they had an agreement before we had a chance to vote. So, that was a difficult time period. The new head of the Players Association is Michelle Roberts, and I think she's great. I've had several opportunities to talk to Michelle at certain events, and I think she did an outstanding job in this collective bargaining agreement. I think she has the players' best interests at heart. She's a no-nonsense lady, but she's serious about her business, and she's serious about looking out for what's best for the players. So I think Michelle is a great hire for the Players Association, without a doubt.
Were you fond of Billy Hunter?
I didn't know Billy as well, but I like Billy from the few interactions I had with him when I was a player. I thought he was a good guy. I know Michelle Roberts a lot better because I'm on the board of the NBA Retired Players Association, so I get an opportunity to interact with her a lot more. I didn't know Billy as well, but I never had any bad experiences or anything with Billy when he was in office.
Do you enjoy serving on the board of the Retired Players Association?
Yeah, I do. This is my fourth year on the board. I did a 3-year term. I was reelected, so I'm doing my second term, but I really enjoyed it. It's been a good opportunity for me to have guys like Spencer Haywood, Rick Barry, in the room with you, man. Sometimes you got to pinch yourself and say, wow, this is some of the greatest players that ever played the game. So it's been a blessing.
Be a fun auction item, Eldridge. If I could bid on that auction item, hang out with you.
I've got some. If you got enough money, you can bid it up, baby. You can have it.
Love it. Paul Schneiderman on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Eldridge Recasner. Eldridge, I see your presence on Twitter, and I've heard some of your commentaries. You've certainly expressed some thoughts about the Trump administration, and you certainly have some views about some subjects beyond basketball. Have you always been pretty political, Eldridge?
I don't know if political is the right word to use, but when it comes to social issues, I have to say, yeah. I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. A lot of racial segregation when I was a kid. So yeah, I don't think it's by choice. I just think it's in my DNA and where I'm from. I believe in speaking up when I don't see something that I feel is right. So I wouldn't say so much political because I'm not a fan of politics at all, and I mean that as far as in any area. I'm not just talking about politicians. One of the biggest gripes I think we all have is just the politics you face wherever you work on a daily basis. That's crap. And when you talk about the real politics, then that's really crap. So if that made it clear for me, I think you get my point.
When you played, Eldridge, in the 1990s era, were a lot of players talk politics or social policy much?
No, because I don't remember the drama when I played like we have now. A president was looked at as a person of respect, and he didn't have to demand it. It was just given to him due to the position. So I think, the situation has changed a little bit, and that's why you're seeing so much upheaval and so many people coming out. And then the social media era is giving everybody a voice. Back in the day, a reporter had to break your story, but now you can break your own story. So the times has changed.
Eldridge, you mentioned that you're involved in the NBA Retired Players Association. Are most of your current friends former basketball players? Or do you have a lot of friends outside basketball circles too?
I have friends outside of basketball circles. I say most of my longtime friends, yeah, but I have some friends, especially here in Seattle, that I didn't play basketball with. But basketball pretty much gave me the bulk of my friends that I have. And now you talk about politics. That's the one thing that I've always loved about sports. Once you step on a court, who your mom is, who your dad is, how much money you got, none of that stuff matters. It's either you can play or you can't. And, for a guy like me, I just wish the real world, worked like that. But unfortunately, it doesn't.
You recognize that there are social injustices out there for sure.
Yep.
Eldridge, you mentioned that you play in the CBA, and Major League Baseball, as you know, has a major minor league baseball system where an 18-year-old kid can decide to not to go to college and make some money playing minor league baseball. Do you think basketball should incorporate? It would certainly affect college basketball a lot. But do you think basketball should incorporate more of a baseball-style minor league system?
I don't know enough about the baseball-style minor league system to probably answer that question accurately, Paul. I do know I've been to a couple of Tacoma Rainiers games, and I think they were awesome. But, the NBA has the NBA Development League. But to tell you what the difference is between minor league baseball and that, I'm not knowledgeable enough to know. But I think the NBA is doing a lot better job with their Development League, which is now called the G League because it's sponsored by Gatorade. But, it's just, the minor leagues are the minor leagues, man. I mean, I don't know how much better you can make it. I think the D League is giving kids an opportunity to be seen, and that's all you want.
It would definitely change the complexion of college basketball if players were, instead of going to college for a year or two, were going right to the CBA.
Yeah, I don't think they pay enough, Paul. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You're gonna roll the dice to make $25,000 a year or stay in college where you can make millions. I think they're gonna go to college, and I think that would be the right decision. Even though college isn't for everybody, but I think the bulk of the good players are gonna at least go to college and try, unless somehow. So you're telling me that minor league baseball players make enough to live off of, because minor league basketball players do not. I know that for a fact. If you got a contract in the D League. Yeah, you're living at home with your mom and pop, so you're living with somebody in the family. It's not enough to live on your own.
I'm telling you, you got that folksiness. Well, Eldridge, we're about to wrap up here, and I'd love to talk to you longer, but hopefully I'll get you back one day. It's been great to have you on our station. What does the future hold for Eldridge Recasner?
I don't know, Paul. I've got 4 kids, man, and right now I'm just trying to focus on giving them the best life I can to try to prepare them, for when they leave the nest. Outside of that, I just want to enjoy my family, man, and my mother's getting up in age. I try to get back to New Orleans as much as I can, and at this point, I'm trying to just enjoy life. I did the grind with the NBA. I'm going through the grind right now with my kids because college is brutal, man. I have a daughter at USC, and I tell you what, it is not cheap. And I got 3 kids after them. 2 of them don't want to play sports, so I'm hoping that they're academic geniuses and get academic scholarship. But right now, I just turned 50. I thank God for that. I think that's still young, but when you're a kid from the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans, that's a hell of an accomplishment to make it to 50.
Eldridge, it's been great to have you on. Thanks.
Thank you.